Hey everyone, my name is Shanice and welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be talking about all the books that I read in May. It was a mixed bag kind of month. I did find some really fantastic reads, a few duds. I have some unpopular opinions as usual. And to preface the video once again, these are all just my personal opinions. I know I'm going to make some people mad, but let's just value the fact that we all think differently, and book 2 would be really boring if we all had the same opinions. So let's just get to talking about the books. Okay, so the first book I actually don't own. I borrowed it from the library and thankfully returned it. That one was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This was very popular when it first came out in 2014 and became even more popular a couple of years ago because the pandemic that we all were forced into was very similar to the storyline in the book. The plot itself maybe hits close to home for a lot of us. In the novel, there is a mysterious plague going around that started in Georgia, the country, and spread all around the world. 99% of the population has been infected and has died. And the novel follows a few characters within that 1% group of survivors. And the protagonist that we meet is Kirsten. She's somewhere in her 20s and she's an actress. She actually, when she was younger, we see, because that's how the book starts, when she was younger, she witnesses one of the first, if not the first, death of that pandemic. And now that she's older, she has continued acting and she's part of the Traveling Symphony, which is a troupe of actors and musicians and other performers that perform Shakespeare plays for the different towns that they come across in their route throughout Canada. So Kirsten is the main protagonist and we get a lot of chapters from her perspective, but the book also follows a few other characters, and as the novel progresses, we soon realize how all of them are interconnected. So I'll start off with the things that I did enjoy about the novel, namely Kirsten's perspective, and then there's this other character called Jivan, whose perspective I really appreciated too. I thought both of them were really relatable. They were the youngest of the bunch of characters that we do meet, and I did find that their voices and perspectives were the least pretentious. I also really liked this portion in the middle where I thought the tension worked really well. There were a series of disappearances, like one right after the other, and it really piqued my curiosity and I wanted to see how that played out. It made me feel like the characters were all being watched, which is always just a very creepy sensation, so it made for a really suspenseful atmosphere, and yeah, it kept me interested in what the rest of the book was going to do. Something else I liked was the first scene that we get with the prophet. So one thing that the Traveling Symphony does discover on their route is that in one town there seems to be this rising community leader who people call the prophet, and he has his own philosophy that brings hope to people, and he seems to be building a sort of cult in this post-pandemic society. And that first scene that we do get with Kirsten and the Traveling Symphony meeting the prophet, I thought was interesting because, I don't know, it made me a little bit curious to see how the novel would approach the whole premise of religion, which is essentially, a way to explain the world around us when it doesn't fully make sense. And it does give hope to a lot of people. So I thought, okay, what is Emily St. John Mandel going to do? What new religion is she going to make that, fits this new post-pandemic society? So yeah, that initial interaction between the characters just made me excited. The book also teased some really cool ideas about performance. Kirsten is an actress and the whole Traveling Symphony is a group of performers. You have the sort of performative actions of the prophet and religion. You have paparazzi performing compassion towards celebrities when really all they want is a good picture. You get some people who are not in guardian roles sort of performing guardianhood and parenthood onto younger people to make them feel safe. You also have the performance of being okay when in reality inside you're freaking out. And then there's the idea of performance and art being a way to escape our reality. I also really liked the depiction of Canada in the book. I know Emily St. John Mandel is Canadian, and some of the towns that she featured in this novel, she like went to or was raised in. I forgot. It was clear when reading this book that the depictions of the towns were not like done by somebody who's never been to Canada. It felt really genuine. Now, the parts that I really didn't like include what was actually done with the whole prophet story. I did say that I liked the initial interaction between the prophet and other characters because I wanted to see what the novel would do. But then it turns out that the prophet just used Christianity, so there was no new religion, which I thought was kind of boring. I was hoping for something fresh, but no, it just reused a religion that was already in existence. And those themes of performance and art that I thought were really cool just sort of went nowhere. Like, I thought they were kind of superficial. I wanted the novel to dig a little deeper, beyond the fact that, like, we use art to explore our own personal issues, and art sometimes reflects life and vice versa. Like, okay, but like, what else? And then the way the pandemic plotline unfolded was just very predictable to me. I think if you read The Stand by Stephen King, a lot of this novel is going to seem a bit derivative. I just felt like it wasn't adding much new to the genre of like pandemic apocalyptic fiction. It just felt like if you've read other books that dealt with it, you've kind of already you already knew what was going to happen in this one, and it unfolded predictably. So yeah, that was a little disappointing. And also the ending, something happens, the characters discover something within like the last 5 pages or so, and I just felt like to leave the novel there was a bit of a cop out. Like, is there going to be a Station 11 part 2? Like, is this a series? I don't know, just to leave it there just felt like too convenient. And aside from Kirsten and Jivan, I found every other character boring, and like I hated whenever their perspectives came up. Like, I really couldn't care less about that. So yeah, ultimately I gave it like 2.5 out of 5 stars. Was expecting just a lot more, especially for the hype and the resurgence of it a couple of years ago. But yeah, just was not for me. And then, on a different note, to prepare for the Hulu adaptation of Conversations with Friends, I decided to finally pick up Conversations with Friends. And I read it and I loved it. And then I reread it and I loved it again. And then I thought, like, okay, let me just reread all of Sally Rooney's books, and that's what I did. So in the month, like I said, I read Conversations with Friends, then I reread it, then I reread Normal People, and then I read for the first time Mr. Salary. So let's start with Conversations with Friends. I gave it 5 stars. I know Sally Rooney is not for everybody. Her style is sort of economic and to the point. She doesn't have the most flowery prose, but I just find the way that she writes interior lives to be beautiful. I have never felt so seen and understood by a book before, or at least in recent years I haven't. And yeah, I just was really blown away by Conversations with Friends. I think it's her best novel. Very unpopular opinion. I think a lot of people prefer Normal People. But I connected to Frances in this story so much. For those of you who don't know, Frances is in her early 20s. She's a student at Trinity, and she and her ex-girlfriend and best friend, Bobby, they perform poetry together around Dublin. And in one of those performances, they meet Melissa, who is a very famous writer, and they become friends with her, and through that they meet her husband Nick, and Frances falls for Nick, Nick falls for Frances, and an affair ensues. This is all on the back cover, so I'm not spoiling anything, but the book just kind of goes from there. We see how the 4 different people, being Frances, Bobby, Nick, and Melissa, how their points in their friend group change and shift. I think the way that the New Yorker described it on the blurb on the front, well, they describe Rooney, her natural power is as a psychological portraitist, and I completely agree. I think that's a perfect way to describe her writing style. It's just so astute and observational. Like, a lot of times her writing to me reminded me of Elif Batuman. Yeah, I just think Rooney is like the epitome of millennial fiction, and she just gets me. And she's only 2 years older than me, which just makes me feel completely unaccomplished. Right, so like I said, I then reread it, really loved it. For those of you who would like to go watch my video where I compare and contrast the book Conversations with Friends with the Hulu TV adaptation, I will link a video up top. Feel free to watch it or don't, whatever you choose. But yeah, I had a lot of fun making that. After I read and reread Conversations with Friends, I then decided, why not go back and reread Normal People? Because when I read it in 2019, I did enjoy it, but I didn't love it. Upon reread, I have changed my mind. I absolutely love this. I devoured it pretty quickly. This book also focuses on intimate relationships between sort of awkward and introverted people. Here we have Connell and Marianne. They have known each other for most of their lives. We start with them in school. Marianne is pretty much bullied. She's kind of a loner. She's incredibly intelligent and very confident about her intelligence, and it rubs people the wrong way. Connell is more popular in school. He's a bit shyer. He has a harder time expressing himself, but him and Marianne develop a very beautiful relationship, a beautiful and slightly toxic relationship. And then we follow those two characters for the next 4 years. They go off to Trinity. Then we just see how their relationship develops through time. Just again, a beautiful sense of interiority. I just sort of am amazed by how Rooney can just articulate emotions and feelings. I can't get enough. I feel like I'm completely obsessed with Sally Rooney now. I will forever read whatever she writes. And yeah, I love this. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars simply because I still feel like Conversations with Friends is the better book. I still adored this, and I also did a compare and contrast video talking about the book and its TV adaptation, which I will also link above. So yeah, also feel free to watch that. Then I read Mr. Salary, which is a short story by Sally Rooney, and I gave this 2 stars. Yeah, I mean, her writing to me in here was not the most developed. I felt like the characters sort of fell flat. I didn't care for either, what were their names? I don't even remember their names. Suki and Nathan. I didn't find the writing as piercing as it could have been or what I wanted it to be. I also didn't think it said anything particularly profound about life or death that you haven't read elsewhere. And honestly, some of the metaphors and more like stylistic choices that Rooney had were a little bit awkward and funky. So yeah, I didn't love this, but you know, it's a quick read. I think if you want to be a completist about Sally Rooney, you might as well. Yeah, not my favorite, but not the worst short story I've ever read. Okay, and now moving on to a DNF, something I rarely ever do, but I had to for this one. This one was for Disorientation by Elaine Shea Chow. I was expecting literary fiction and academic satire at its finest. You know, the plot just sounds like something I would love. You have the main character who is in her final year of her PhD, and she's ready to get out of there. She's uninterested in what she's studying. She feels like a token in her department, and with that I was just expecting something really brutal and unflinching, and something that was going to unpack racism and Orientalism and all the problems in academia. No, it didn't do that. I only read like 6% of my Kindle, and just within that 6%, I knew that this was not going to be for me. First of all, the writing is it's very YA, which is not a bad thing at all. It's not inherently an insult, but it's just not what I was expecting, especially because the character is supposed to be 29 years old, studying for her PhD. She, I guess, is a young adult in the figurative sense, but when you think about the age demographic that young adult as like a publishing demographic is, it's like it doesn't match up. And so the style here was very juvenile. The jokes were not funny. Irene is the most unbelievable PhD student I've ever set eyes upon. I just found it like unbelievable that someone like that would actually be in a PhD program. Like, yes, there are going to be moments where you just want to quit, where it's going to be too much, but I don't know, to just not even want to study what you're studying from the very get-go, like before you even send your PhD application, just seems, again, unbelievable. She never felt real to me. It was just like a two-dimensional flat character who wasn't funny, who wasn't really saying anything interesting or new. And then within that 6%, I also got to the part where the story sort of shifts, and I think it's trying to be like a literary mystery, an academic literary mystery, but it was so obvious too, and unfunny, and just no. I knew right away this was not for me, so I quit. Who knows, maybe it did get better, but I don't think I would have had a good time completing it. Like, it would have been worth it. So yeah, DNF for me. I didn't realize how many unpopular opinion type books I would feature in this video, but well, here's another one. Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This was a reread for me. I guess I was in a reread mood, thanks to Sally Rooney. So Rebecca, it follows the nameless narrator who is very shy, and the book will remind you that she's shy every other sentence because apparently that's her personality trait. Yes, so she's very shy, and she winds up marrying this very hunky, very rich man, Mr. De Winter, and she goes off to live with him in his beautiful mansion. Recently, Mr. De Winter's wife, Rebecca, passed away due to mysterious circumstances, and it seems nobody talks about it. It's a taboo in the household. Even though it is a taboo, it's clear that everybody is comparing the narrator to Rebecca in everything that she does, which makes her even more insecure about herself and her class and her situation than she was before. I ended up giving it a 2 stars. I don't know. I really want to have read the book that it seems everybody else reads when they read Rebecca, because it is a YouTube darling. I don't know. It's just not for me. So my problems. Well, actually, no. Let's start with the good stuff, because it's not an overall horrible read, but anyway, so the good stuff. I thought the writing in parts was very beautiful. I think Daphne du Maurier just writes metaphor really well. She really follows through with it. I think sometimes authors can sort of start off very beautifully, and then by the end of the sentence it's a mixed metaphor, but I think du Maurier just really commits to it, and she does have really beautiful prose. Sometimes, though, it can be overwritten. I feel like this book didn't have to be as long as it was. But anyway, beautiful prose, I will give her that. And I do think that she writes insecurity very well too. She does go into the narrator's mind as she's sort of spiraling in overthinking things. I thought that was very real and, yeah, well thought through, well processed. And I liked how by the end of the novel, du Maurier, it becomes clear she's sort of switching our expectations. Who we expect to be the villain is actually maybe the most sane of the characters, and then the people that we thought were innocent the whole time are actually crazy. So I liked that switch. I think it subverted expectations very nicely, and yeah, that was the one like unpredictable thing about the novel, and I like that. So yeah, good job, Daphne du Maurier. Now, where it went wrong for me was, like I said, I thought parts of it were like way overwritten. I also thought that the mystery and thriller plotline was quite predictable too. I think maybe it's unfair for me to judge it because it's, I'm reading it in 2022. This was written decades ago. I've been, maybe more used to true crime and thrillers, that the basic plotline of this book just isn't that shocking to me. Also, like, the book, like I said, it just overuses the word shy. I feel like it's inserted for the reader to like interpret the narrator, and it didn't feel true to how the narrator would actually describe herself. I'm a shy person, but in my mind, I don't tell myself like, oh, I'm shy, I do this because I am shy. Like, I don't know, there's like a way to break that down a little bit more. There are like different ways to express it to yourself than how you would express it to other people. I wanted like more from the narrator's personality than I'm just shy. Yeah, I got old very quickly. And also, like, okay, there's this character, his name is Ben. It's never specified or really talked about what his condition is. He may have a learning disability, we don't know, but he is neurodivergent in some capacity. The narrator constantly calls him an idiot, and everything about him is always linked to him being an idiot. So she'll say something like, he had slit eyes like an idiot, which, I don't know, gave me the undertones of like racism, but I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking things. Or she would also say like, his like idiot smile, or his idiot posture, or the idiot way that he said things. It's like, okay, you think he's an idiot, I got it. It was just extremely uncomfortable to read, and I felt like the novel never tried to challenge this opinion in any way. It was just like, yeah, Ben is an idiot. Okay, the next book that I read was Kink, which is a short story collection edited by R.O. Kwon and Garth Greenwell. So, I think it's pretty obvious. This is a book of short stories, each of which explore the idea of kink in some way. Now, I ended up giving this 3 stars. If you want to just handpick some stories to read from this collection and you don't necessarily want to read all of it, I would recommend the following. The Cure by Melissa Phoebos, Best Friendster Date Ever by Alexander Chi, Mirror Mirror by Vanessa Clark, Reach by Roxane Gay, Gospodar by Garth Greenwell, and Scissors by Kim Fu. And also Safe Word by R.O. Kwon. That's not to say that there aren't others that are excellent stories in here, but I found that those were maybe the ones that explored kink in the way that I thought the entire short story collection would. So the editors sort of wanted to make this collection to explore kink and sexuality and sensuality in stories, and they wanted to explore the spectrum of that sort of sensuality that's normally seen as taboo. But I felt like most, if not all, of the stories focused on like one type of kink, which was BDSM. And though some stories in here were very beautiful to read, like the Carmen Maria Machado one, and then there was the one by Callum Angus, which I thought like was one of the most beautifully written stories I've read in a while. But stories like that, I'm not sure why they were included in here. I felt like a lot of these could have really pushed the boundaries more. I think the two actually that really did that were Reach by Roxane Gay, like absolutely, that one pushed the boundaries, and Scissors by Kim Fu. Those two I think fit the prompt the best. But yeah, I think it's an enjoyable, fun experience, and you do get some beautiful writing, but overall I guess I didn't feel like it was as cohesive as I thought it was, and I think it could have explored the spectrum a little bit more than it did. I also read El Desierto Nunca Se Acaba by Jose Watanabe, which is a Peruvian poetry collection. I will be reviewing this and my other Latin American books all the way at the end of the year. So you do have a while to wait to hear what I have to say about this poetry collection, but I did enjoy it, so I'll give you that. And if you want to see the other books that I'm reading for this personal Latin American book challenge, I will again link a video up top. I really am proud of this video and this project for my own reading life, so yeah, I hope you check that out. And lastly, I finally read the entirety of Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I will say that I enjoyed book 2 much more than I enjoyed book 1. Book 2 saved my entire reading experience of this. I think, book 1 is the one that everybody studies all the time. I think if you read an excerpt from this book in high school or in college, it was likely from book 1. You have the scene with the windmills, you have the scene where the priest is deciding which books to burn, you have the scene with the galley slaves, etc., etc. Like, this is obviously a revolutionary novel. It follows a man who now calls himself Don Quixote. He is in love with chivalric novels and romances, enough so that he convinces himself that he is a knight errant, and as a knight errant, he should have a squire, and so he finds this guy from his town who we know now as Sancho Panza, and these two go on a series of ridiculous adventures throughout Spain. I really do encourage people to read this, to push through book one. I didn't find it as funny as part two. I think part two for me is just more emotional. I think it explores the metafiction a lot better than part one. I also think it humanizes Don Quixote more. Part one, he's very much the joke, but part two sort of takes a step back and sees the cruelty of the people around him who are playing tricks on him and like not actually helping him in any way. You sort of see Don Quixote as being like kind of a sad old man who just like wants a fun and important life, and he finds that through literature. And the book has really witty and clever commentary on the church, on how Spain treated the Moors, on the archetypical role of women in literature and in society. There are some really hilarious scenes in here for sure. And yeah, by the end I was just like very emotional about about Don Quixote, and made me like reconsider everything that happened in book one. So yeah, if you want to pick up a classic, I would definitely suggest this one. It is very long, it's 940 pages, and I would also recommend this translation by Edith Grossman. I know there are others, and maybe some scholars would say, you know, this is not the best, but I quite enjoyed it. I thought it moved very nicely. I thought it captured the humor really well, and yeah, this is like just very fun. So if you want a fun classic read that obviously is incredibly important to international literary canon, yeah, I would suggest pick this up, because yeah, it is worth it, even though book one kind of is not that great. Read it for book two. And good news, next Wednesday I will be posting a reading vlog of my experience reading this entire book. So yeah, stay tuned for that one. That should be coming up next week. And yes, those are all of the books that I managed to get through in May. Yeah, an up and down reading month, but thankfully I got some really amazing books out of it, namely the Rooneys and Don Quixote. I want to know what you guys are reading. What was your favorite book of May? What books are you looking forward to reading in June? Let me know in the comments down below, and make sure to like and subscribe. And yeah, I will see you next week. Stay tuned for my Don Quixote vlog. And yeah, have a great day and see you next time. Bye.